Dr. Alison Walsh. Welcome to Compassion Without Burnout. This is based on an original presentation that was developed by the Prime UK in 2015, where it's now being rolled out into some medical school curricula around the country. I've developed it for the Australian context this year. Prime grew from a UK initiative in postgraduate medical education during the 1990s, teaching compassionate whole person care. Now its volunteer work extends into 90 countries, responding to invitations to serve without cost to improve medical education and whole person care for local health professionals who can then spread the vision and organisation in their nation. The vision of Prime has always been to encourage and empower teachers in their own country to replicate and develop Prime's teaching of compassionate medicine locally, which is what this is a development of Prime resources into Australia. These are the ambitious topics list that we're going to be doing. It's automatically jumping. I'm not sure how to take that away. We're covering topics that are quite sensitive today and sharing in breakout groups with each other. The sharing of any information is, of course, voluntary, and in this environment, it's good for it to be confidential. We want this to be a safe environment for sharing in. So what's the current problem? This is a long quote written pre-pandemic, but I think it encapsulates the problem so well, from Eric Levi. I'm realizing more and more that what brings me greatest... now the problem is sorry, I just got that over my writing and I can't see all the words. I'm sure you can read it faster than I can read it, but anyway. So this ENT surgeons found that there's relentless pressure from the administration, not just seeing the patients, and that's taking away from the joy and purpose and meaning of medicine, that it's now dominating our care of patients. Hang on, it's jumped. And that it's just being seen as a business where it's just, we're a commodity and we're churning out the medical care. And that changing this doesn't have to be complicated, and it's good if it was changed from the top to the bottom, but if we need to, we can change it from the bottom up. And this bit, we can humanise it, we can inject compassion into this business of medicine. We can regain some measure of control, support and meaning in medicine. So the loss of meaningful engagement under excessive administrative burden, I think, occurs in many different vocations which are around anyone serving the public. We each have our job to do, but we all need to be treated with respect and compassion. Now, I'm sure some people will be able to relate to these issues in whatever field you work in, that there's just problems inherent in the workplace. Doctors, nurses and other healthcare staff completed an anonymous online questionnaire in 2020 in UK, and there's high rates of feeling stressed by what was going on. And it was very thoughtful of them to have photos of themselves laminated so that people could see, the patients could see who was actually caring for them behind their PPE. Back home in Australia, our junior doctors were stressed in 2016 prior to the pandemic as well. And the stresses could come from multiple situations. These stresses then have a knock-on effects on the adversely impacting on their work. Being stressed is a common theme among many health professionals during the pandemic. There was a questionnaire of 8,000 health professionals, and significant numbers of them were feeling quite stressed in 2020. That also the physician staff were feeling very stressed Australian College of Physicians surveyed their members. And many doctors are not only struggling to cope with the burdens of their vocation, but also with how they can even acknowledge the issue and ask for help. I don't think I gave you time to read that one. There's another quote from Eric Levi. Under the pump, working his usual 14-hour days, but frustrated more and more by the extra burdens now placed on us. And how that was impacting on his social networking. Huge patient loads have stressed our emergency departments to breaking point, as well as this emergency physician took note. Sorry, it's jumping forward faster than I'm meaning to because of the automatic time. We haven't yet seen the full impact this will have, as I've even got friends and who are in medicine and nursing who have dropped out because they've found it just too hard. And all around the world, the same thing is happening. So can you recognise any of these traits in yourself or colleagues? Besides hardened, callous, depressed, angry, anxious, irritable, rude, disrespectful, short-fused, disillusioned, and even suicidal, I'd add also withdrawn. Many of our colleagues can become like that. This is actually the last one, the suicidal. This is what motivates my interest in doing this voluntary work of developing and presenting Compassion Without Burnout. I once did a locum for a GP who's working in a solo general practice. She just walked out of her practice, leaving the practice in a lurch. So then the receptionist had to find someone that could look at the results and things that were coming in for her. Unfortunately, while I was there, I didn't go and find this GP. I was busy taking over her solo general practice and was busy seeing patients. And I really regret not having gone and found her and seen her myself, because later I heard that she'd committed suicide. She'd been a solo GP. She was doing GP obstetrics. She had a methadone clinic, and she was just doing too much. And it was either do too much or felt like her life wasn't worthwhile, and she killed herself. I'm not sure the underlying what other circumstances were surrounding her life, but it was just the tragedy that someone so talented and caring ended up doing that. We're facing an unprecedented crisis across all the caring professions. This presentation is hopefully a bit of a help to some. So, compassion. Next slide, please. What do you think compassion is? Put your answers in the chat box. Yeah, so empathy, understanding, kindness, feeling for others. So next slide, please. I'll just say next instead of having a whole sentence phrase.
Yeah.
There's many different, hang on, I just got to move my chat box because it's right in the middle of the screen now. There's many different definitions, but this is one definition of it. Is an empathic response to suffering, sensitivity shown in order to understand another person's suffering, and a willingness to help and promote the well-being of that person in order to find a solution to their situation, if possible, because sometimes there's not a complete answer to their problem. Next. Medical education can lose picture of this whole patient care, not only working in the physical aspects, their anatomy, physiology, and imaging. Most of us became a health professional because of the wanting to help people and relieve their suffering. So next. If you're a patient of a healthcare provider, it's nice to think that the person looking after you would have these attributes. And these are all attributes that are good to have. Next. Everyone needs compassion. People sometimes will have more compassion for their patients than they do for themselves or their family, shortchanging themselves, not eating or having breaks, and yet be compassionate for their patients. So it's like looking after everyone. Next. That jumped a slide. Yeah. What are we teaching our most precious resource, the students? Unfortunately, in 2008, in America, medical students are seeing callousness in their mentors and not necessarily learning compassion. Okay. In 2004, researchers asked patients what they thought compassion is. I just trying to press my next button. Next. Patients' opinion. This then was a summary of what the patients thought about what constitutes compassionate care in the assessment of management of their concerns. Next. Dirksen reviewed 7 papers on empathic care, and it showed that practicing compassionate care has benefits for the patients. Taking the time to really understand them helped hone diagnostic ability, enable the patient to feel more in control of their care and have a say about how they're cared for. Next. And oops, just a second. I just got a chat screen that's jumped right across my chat screen's just completely covering the PowerPoint presentation, which isn't good. I'll just get rid of it. And Shanderfeld showed that there's benefits for the care provider as well in providing compassionate care. Yeah, so these are enablers of compassionate care. So just keep pressing through them. Yeah, so that stop back. Yep. So and you can see that, like, if you have a physician or nurse or someone who does these things, you feel really connected with them, encouraged to talk. It looks like they care. The eye contact is very much a cultural thing as to how much eye contact's appropriate. You stare down a traditional Indigenous person, they'll think you're angry with them. Whereas if you have sustained eye contact with someone, they can feel connected if they've got a different cultural background. And if all of that sort of thing does take time to make that connection. Next slide. And then just click through these ones and stop at the 5th one is a stop. Yep. And these are barriers that the Royal College of Physicians came up with. Yeah, they're certainly, they're true, I think, of general practice at least as well. And I'm sure other professions too. Next. I think this can help explain how we got to where we are now. That during the Enlightenment, they divided up what's physical from what the material real world to what's a spiritual thing, and less obvious in the West. If you're next slide, see the next one. So people are simultaneously and equally body, mind, spirit, and social beings. And next slide. Our view in Western thinking is that we are mostly bodies. In medicine, that equates to results of blood tests, imaging, and pathology. The physical has squeezed out everything else. Research now shows just how important these other dimensions are in causing and treating many different illnesses. For example, holding on to anger increases the risk of coronary heart disease, but the opposite, forgiveness, lowers this risk. And next. In 1998, the World Health Organization recognized the spiritual and social components matter to whole person healthcare, that we're more than just flesh and bones. Addressing the less tangible aspects of each person matters in delivering care. Next. These modalities belong together for optimal understanding and care of people. Our minds, our spirit, how we think and feel often need at least as much care as any physical problem. The goal of Prime is to restore this balance. The greatest challenge facing contemporary medicine is for it to regain its humanity, its caritas, without losing its essential foundation in science, to find the middle way. Okie dokie. This was like a light bulb moment to me, this, how come it's been separated? How come in the West we think just of the appendix in bed 5 instead of, you know, the person who's got the illness? This was like a light bulb moment, having this, these images that I saw in the whole person care from the Prime training on whole person care. What do others think about those 4 slides?
Yeah, I think post-enlightenment, great strides have been made to combine the two. But then as technology is taking off again this century, the risk is that it's fragmenting again. And I certainly see that on the ground. Yeah.
This is my Aussie take on the stress curve. So this is Yerkes-Dodson's inverted U stress curve, which is that performance improves under stress, but only to a point, after which there's often rapid descent. Next. So just slowly with these, thanks, Petrina. So initially there's low pressure, and if you're able to do more than that, it's jumping too fast. If you're able to do more than that, then you can become frustrated or bored with that. But if you're just learning, that's, you know, learning to put in your first IV line, then that's where you need to be in low pressure to optimize learning. And then next is the pressure starts to build. But it's a good pressure so that you can manage. This is pretty cruisy and you're okay with this and you're able to do your work. And next. And then those that like a bit more adrenaline actually like it when there's more excitement and longer hours and ED's busy and there's lots of patients. No time to have a cuppa. And then next. But then it starts getting too much that, you know, you start feeling like you're going to fall over, that it's just getting a bit too much for your ability to cope with that. And then the last one is that when there's the breaking point, it's just too much pressure and it's not going to work anymore. So next. So you can ask yourselves, where am I on the stress curve? And are you happy where you are? And what can you do to move? So what's burnout? Next. Burnout's defined as improperly managed workplace stress. So the emphasis is on that it's improperly managed workplace stress. So it's not necessarily the person's fault, it's that the workplace has been unmanageable for that particular person. Yeah. Next. There's a divide between what's expected and what that person can do. Okay. Oops. So they certainly can predict what, who will burn out where, because with these sort of early predictors, it's like a job demands more than what's human limitations can give. Yeah. A role conflict leading to a perceived lack of control, being under pressure from several often incompatible demands that compete with one another. insufficient reward and lack of recognition for the work performed, devaluing both the work and the worker, lack of support from the manager or team, consistently associated with exhaustion, work perceived as unfair or inequitable, caused by an effort to reward imbalance, the relationship between the individual and the environment leading to feelings of imbalance or a bad fit. Such incongruity connects with excessive job demands and unfairness at work. Okay. Healthcare workers, the work that healthcare carers do puts them at increased risk of burnout just by the very nature of the job we do. I think there's 6 clicks in here. And the next slide. There's 3 clicks, so just one at a time. Thanks. Exhaustion can be physical, cognitive, and emotional fatigue. And often people will describe all 3. Cynicism can feel detached, negative, even callous, and not really care anymore. And next, inefficiency, like feelings of incompetence and a lack of achievement and productivity at work. And next slide. And there's 7 clicks here. Other factors could cause these, but still need support. So these 7 that are coming, thanks, Katrina. These 7, there could be other reasons why people have these things happening in their life, but work burnout can be one of the things that can be the reason for them. Next, and there's 6 clicks here. Running on empty or in chronically stressed state can certainly impact all areas of our health. And some people will particularly have one thing that happens when they're stressed, like, getting a headache or feeling indigestion or getting constipated, or the opposite, getting diarrhea when they're stressed. So there's often a pattern for each person as to what their stress symptoms are. Some people that are stressed don't get any opportunity to experience the symptoms because they might, first thing that they know about it is they have a VFRS. So, myocardial infarction can be the defining end of their life. Next. So it's helpful also to consider what it's not. Burnout's not a sign of weakness, nor is it a mental illness. It's not a mental diagnosis. The individual's not to blame because the environment plays a major role. If you work to burn the candle at both ends, there's a limit to how much you can keep working and not sleep. And for each person, that limit will be different. So, some people can get by on 4 hours sleep and some people need 10 hours sleep. And if the person that needs the 10 hours sleep is expected to be keeping on doing a 16-hour day every day, it's just not going to work. Prevention is always the best solution. Addressing the factors that can lead to burnout is really well worthwhile. And it's much better to be prepared, address the factors that can lead to burnout to avoid crashing. So before the person gets to that on the stress curve to breakdown and they're crashing, to identify it and do something about it. Next. So this minimising the impact of the burnout will also vary depending on your pattern of burnout. And you can just click through these, Katrina. It's a good idea to do something proactive to avoid the progression of the symptoms. Sometimes that can be really hard to do though, because you're so stressed and busy and life just keeps going that if you try to assess, like it's like a little animal on one of those, I can't think what it's called, a little wheel, and the little rat keeps running on around the wheel and the wheel keeps rolling, is that if you stop, you'll just spin out of control. It's hard when in the middle of the process of being so stressed and busy to actually be able to sit back and reflect and go, hang on, something needs to change. Next. So prevention, early recognition and recovery share very similar elements. What aspects of your situation can truly be fixed and which can you change? Altering your perspective can buffer the negative impact of even the inflexible aspects. Make what changes you can to improve your long-term productivity and protect your health. Seek out rich interpersonal interactions and continual personal and professional development. Because crashing and burning, is like the lady who I worked for in rural general practice. Her crash and burn certainly didn't help. It wasn't a good solution. Next. When's it okay to work from home? Is home a place of refuge and recovery for you, or is that another place of stress? We all, especially with working from home through COVID and with having access to computers remotely, it's very tempting to take work home. And sometimes that'll be to your benefit, like you'll be able to take a phone call instead of having to go into work, turn a computer on and write some notes. You'll be able to just do the notes at home. But is that then taking away from the refuge of your home, being a place away from work? Being on call certainly is a huge intrusion on your private life. And when that's part of the reason why I had to stop at the other place I was working, because I was on call every Monday night and 1 in 4 weekends, which to some people who do on call, like Eric Levi, who's on call 24/7 all year, as he writes in his blog, that is where I got those quotes from, my on-call was very little, but I just can't sleep when I'm on call. My brain goes into, you're on call, stay awake, something might happen. And I was looking after a 20-bed hospital, and I could have an empty hospital and still be awake through the night, wondering, like my brain was just turned on. And I found that really, really exhausting. The text messages too, if people have your private number, can be very intrusive because they come up as notifications and you feel like, well, who's that from and who's that from? And there's no time to unwind. How much time people need will vary to be able to unwind. And some people, there was one time I met a minister and a very busy parish, and things are always happening with people, and he just thrived on the adrenaline and feeling useful and the challenge of it all. His perspective was quite different. Okay, so next we're talking about resilience. So next. So the definition relates to that in the face of stress, there's a toughness and ability to bounce back. So both toughness and bouncing back are really important in this definition. Next. So what does resilience look like for you in each of these areas of life? A toughness and being strong. How's that look? A mental toughness or a social toughness. And the bouncing back after challenges that come along. How's that look in terms of, spiritual bouncing back? Next. So what's the game plan of the 4 out of 5 physicians that don't get burnt out? If 1 in 5 is burnt out, what are the other 4 getting up to that helps prevent them from being burnt out? That's what someone asked, and this is the list. Next slide is the list of the strategies that they had, the ones who didn't get burnt out. Next.
Oh, can we just go back? I just want to get those ones down. Okay, thanks.
I find this list really interesting to think about and reflect on in terms of resilience. think I need to give this list a bit more time and thought myself in terms of how resilient am I now in these aspects, and how might resilience be built in these aspects, and what I find really challenging. Next. Resilience is about bending under stress instead of breaking, then bouncing back stronger. Next. So can resilience be developed or strengthened? Is it something you can change in yourself? Next. Good things can come out of experiencing challenges. So, you know, you've been through a hard time. Sometimes there's been benefit in, and it's not good to go through a hard time, but sometimes there's benefits that just wouldn't have happened without that hard time. Next. It's helpful to reflect on what else is going on in a person's life as to how resilient they're being. Certainly, if there's major life stresses happening, it's much harder to deal with things like long hours and being on call, or if there's grief or past things that have happened in the past that come up that make it more challenging to cope with stress. And with anybody at work, you don't know what else is happening in their life. Necessarily, you don't know the full extent of what other stresses they've got. Next. I love this quote by Nelson Mandela about it's not about success as much as how many times I fell down and got back up again. There's a lot of strength of character being able to bounce back. Next. But is resilience yet another competency that we must achieve? Or, next. Or feel a failure at if we don't achieve it?
I'll just comment, there is a criticism of the resilience concept in that it puts too much emphasis on the individual and not enough on the social context.
Yeah.
If we're in a bad social context, you know, difficult situation, everyone's fighting, it's very hard to be resilient in that situation.
Yeah. So next. Our resilience has been weaponized. The problem lies with the individual not being tough enough. You've got to remain strong and bounce back no matter what we expect of you. But how can resilience be quantified or achieved at all? Everyone has their limit. Many variables contribute to that. And you know, sometimes the expectations are just more than anyone can manage. Can people become more resilient, like training for a marathon? So next. And this list on building resilience, if you think resilience is something that can be built, mirrors the list for burnout. Which areas might need improvement or to optimise your resilience? Many of us working in our training time have been moved from place to place, as you do 3 to 6 month placements at different places around the state or around Australia, and that fractures your social network.
Yeah.
Next. And another view of resilience is that there's a toughness, but there's also weakness is part of it. And this young Girl Scout is standing up to an unpleasant man at a thing in a protest in Czechoslovakia. That we're all made with some degree of weakness, even the toughest of us. Next. And next. And that there is a bit of the idea of it's not so much an individual thing, but that there's we can rely on, like, being together as a group makes us stronger. We're very individualistic in the West, that it's each person to themselves and cope or you know, dip out or something. But this concept of looking after the tribe, that's each looking after each other. Next. It's harder to look after each other though when each of us is stressed and there's like a lack of time and that. So how would you react if you were advised to become more resilient? How can weakness become a source of strength? And what are some challenges to seeking help? Have you had any challenges in seeking help? Seeking help can certainly be a thing of admitting weakness, is that you need someone's help, which we like to think that we're strong and not needing other people's help. We're the ones that are the problem solvers, not the ones who need help. So next slide. So then we come to the concept of flourishing. Next. That we're, you know, flourishing brings out concepts of like doing really well and thriving and blooming and being productive. Next. With the image of plants that we're thriving. Yeah. Philosophically and psychologically flourishing. Next. So that there's an authentic connection between our values, meaningful engagement in the world, the pursuit of excellence, and personal growth through challenges. Next. So now with in terms of self-assessment, there's three.
I've actually sent it to everyone. If you can have access to your email, just for your information.
Yeah, we can do this later. This is for after the webinar anyway.
Okay.
So I keep looking at you, your image of you instead of looking at the camera on my computer. So there's 3 exercises to do after the webinar. Next. This is the areas of life where you assess how you're going in all the different areas of life that I could think of, because it like gives you a whole panorama of how's your life going. And it's interesting that any one of these individual areas can be what rocks the boat and upsets you. Like if you've ever been sued, the legal one, having court case and other issues, that can be that you then just can't cope with work anymore, for example. So then the next one is 24/7 time use. We all get 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it can be helpful to just sit down and look at where does your whole week go? And to analyze, like, what are we expecting of ourselves? What can we achieve in the days that we have? Are we just trying to get too much done in a day? So there's 2 work examples here following of this 24/7. So this one, they've coloured it in that work is red. So they're part-time with 4.5 days a week, but also do quite a lot of voluntary work. And then Green is their hobbies, so they're busy Saturday and Sunday with hobbies. Sleep is purple, and meal prep and foods they've put in as brown. So that's one example. So they're getting 10 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So they're getting 9 hours sleep a day. And the next example is someone that's working more than full time. They're doing 6 days a week and have a big lot of time with commuting to work each week, or some sort of commuting that is work related. And then yellow's their activities of daily living, and the green's their sleep. And they seem to need a whole stack less, or are getting a whole stack less sleep because they go to bed really late, like 10 o'clock, and then are up at, I can't quite read the font on there, but it's down to even 6 hours sleep at night. So that's just some examples. So that's just to show you what is expected of filling in the thing for yourself if you want to do that 24/7 time use. I find that a useful thing to do every so often. So the next is the burnout questionnaire. So and next again, this is what's on the burnout questionnaire, and you just tick or circle the issues that you're having and see, just to self-reflect on how are you going. Next. So you can look at those in terms of physically in each of those aspects, how you're going, and then more of a thinking about your values. And some people will feel quite distressed when their values are different to what's actually happening in their life. Like if you think, I really value time with my family, and then you're working flat out like that last example was, that there's no time in the week to spend time with family because work's occupying so much of your time. So that would be a mismatch between values and what's actually happening in your life. So it can be helpful to think about values as well in the self-assessment. Next. So it's then after doing those individual exercises to ask, like, where are you now and where do you want to be, and what's it going to take to change where you're going to be. Next. And just go back again, sorry. Just back one slide. Yeah, and then choosing one thing to start on. So no, I imagine that GP that just gave up the solo practice and life fell apart for them, that many of those things would have been going pear-shaped. And it can be hard to tackle everything in one go, but just choosing one thing that you can do. And that might be, you know, it's really important to go for a 10-minute walk every day when I get home from work, or, you know, get up 10 minutes earlier and go for a walk, or something that's achievable, that's simple, and progressively make one change after another. Yep. There are things that you can do to help yourself, but sometimes we need help to call on others to help us. Like this little doggy stuck in the deep snow. He's just not going to be able to get out of that snow all by himself. He's stuck. And that can be really hard for us who are the helpers, the carers that usually are helping other people, to go, well, actually, it's me that needs the help this time. It can be a very humbling situation, but that can be quite a barrier to accepting help. Next. Everyone's different in what stresses you, what your limits are, what you need to do to survive. So it can be helpful to think about what self-care can you just really not go without. Like me, I need lots of sleep every night, like 9 hours sleep a night. So each person can work out, you know, what's the bare minimum of what you need to do, and then what really does help you recover from work, like bike riding home to separate work from home, for example. Next. What restores you? You could write in some responses in the chat box as to what really helps restore you. Yes, I agree, Katrina. I need my sleep. That's an interesting idea, Michael. Prayer writing.
Oh, yeah. It's more, well, it's more, yeah, prayer and writing. Yeah.
Oh, right, different.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We'll just keep going then. If you've got other response, you can type them in. Next slide, please. So thinking of us as being body, mind, soul, and social, there's certainly different things in each of those aspects that can be restorative, and it can be helpful to work out what are those aspects that really matter to you. Like, what's the bottom line in coping and thriving for each of these. Next. Are you using less helpful things to try to help? So some people will seek these sort of things in order to cope with stress or difficult situations, and small amounts may be okay, but when it's every day, like for example, you know, a wine after work might be okay, but it can become too many wines after work and a reliance on it, that it then becomes destructive and another concern in your life rather than nurturing and restoring you. Next. Yeah, so I thought this was actually quite helpful. I think I need to take half an hour one time to look at this list and make time to look at this list and think about these things, because each could have several points. Next. I think it's also helpful to keep a journal for a week or two and identify which situations create the most stress for you and how you respond to them. What are your stress symptoms? You know, do you start getting heartburn when it's a long day and another heart sync patient's just asked you about their tiredness, or you know, is it when you get home from work and it's just been a really full day and you know your favorite patient's died or something, and then you know, you start getting a headache and you get home from work and the demands of the family suddenly in your face is just too much. It can be helpful to connect with people around you, with family, friends, colleagues and neighbours, at home, work, school, or in your local community. It can be hard though to connect when your job involves connecting. Sometimes the last thing I want to do when I get home is talk to anyone, because all day I've been talking to people about their problems. Sometimes talking to your friends who aren't medical. I think it's one more.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I think I leant on my computer.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's what we're up to. So there was a friend I just connected with yesterday that I hadn't talked to for like 10 years, and I rang them up to say hi, and they spent half an hour to me complaining about the pandemic and the government's response to the pandemic and how political it all got, and what did I think about vaccinations. It's like, no, don't talk to me about these things. I can't. It's so nice to talk to you again. Bye. Be active is can sometimes be a real challenge when you're physically exhausted at the end of a day. But doing a little bit, step outside and have a big breath of fresh air. Go for a little bike ride, play a game, put on music and dance. Go outside and grow a flower, plant a flower. Exercises can make you feel good, and do what you enjoy. I heard it recently, just move in a way you enjoy it. Instead of seeing exercise and being active as a chore, think of it as a joy to move your body. Take notice, be curious, catch sight of the beautiful, remark on the unusual, notice the changing seasons. And it's just gorgeous now with all the flowers out in spring. Savor the moment, whether you're walking to work, eating lunch, or talking to friends. The mindfulness people have captured that idea in terms of have a mindful moment and drink your coffee instead of gulping it down. Just drink it mindfully, with the aroma of the coffee and the mouth feel in your mouth and things like that. I think God was the institutor of that in saying things like, be still and know that I'm God. Just stop for a sec and be mindful. Keep learning, try something new, discover an old interest. Sign up for a course that you've intended to do. Take on a different responsibility at work. Fix a bike and go for a ride. Learn to play a musical instrument or learn how to cook your favourite food. Set a challenge you will enjoy achieving. If someone's facing overload and burnout, adding extra things can be, just a bother to them. So maybe just going and sitting in a hot bath and shutting the door and, ignoring the world for a while is what they actually need. So it's very much up to where everyone's at. And then give. It can be helpful to think of giving, doing something nice for a friend or a stranger, thanking someone, smiling, volunteering your time, joining a community group, looking out as well as in can be helpful. And next slide. And it's okay to reach out for help. You can give yourself permission to be asking for help. There's various ways in person to seek help. Sometimes there'll be programs that your employer has, or you might need to look beyond that to your own professional group. There's a nurses and midwife group as well, which I've got the link to in an extra document that I've been creating whilst doing this. And next. And online, there's a wealth of information on this sort of thing. The Black Dog Institute has a really, really good lot of information on burnout and avoiding it and dealing with it if you have become burnt out. And the 10 website has a self-assessment tool that you put in answers to the questions which you do anonymously, and it sends you, well, it's anonymous except they've got your email, but it's confidential, and it's not linked to any other source, so that no one's going to tap it and see that you're too stressed to be at work. That helps guide you as to where you're at now and what you might do to help yourself. And there's a Facebook group in the hand-to-hand peer support network, which is good as well. Next. This is a quote from a GP who works in Melbourne, who does quite a lot of psychological care as well as general practice. The nature of our work is that we're looking after sick people that are scared, lonely, stressed, bad things happen to people. The nature of our work is stressful anyway. And I think we have to work on supporting each other. That's really hard when you're busy, and in general practice you're usually working by yourself and you see the others passing in the corridor and don't see each other at meal times because you hardly take a meal. It can be hard to look after each other. Next. It's always tempting to just leave things as they are. May I suggest that you attended this webinar for a reason? And what do you need to do? What will you do? What needs changing and how can you do it? Next. This list is, I think, really helpful to a degree. If there's a pattern of bullying at work, or if there's moral injury happening because of the nature of the work you do or what's expected of you, all these things may be in place, but you still may be feeling stressed or distressed. So this list isn't completely comprehensive, but it's a place to start. Next. If time permits, which is if everyone's got time to hang around for a few more minutes,
yeah,
we're going to talk about employee supervisors. Next. There can become quite a negative culture. Negative, I don't like the word toxic culture, but that's what it's called. Remember, burnout is defined as improperly managed workplace stress. The employer has a crucial role in preventing preventing the stress and supporting employees. Employees are an employment place's best asset. Next. It can help for employers to actually engage with employees, to do things like in a larger employment place, if they went and just sat in scrubs incognito in the tea room and see what are people speaking about, just to put their pulse on the company that they work for and see what's happening. People can spot what's not sincere inquiry as to how they're going, and people can be quite suspicious of being asked how they're going. But yeah, it's nice if the people who are employers or supervisors genuinely care for the people that work for them. Next. It can be helpful for there to be practical assistance in healthcare. Everyone seems overworked, preoccupied, distracted at the same time. Improving staff morale must happen at multiple levels. For example, if there's just an overloaded work, if everyone's getting dangerously overworked, then it's a recipe for disaster. Next. There must be limits to daily activities. You can't, this is another quote from Eric Levi, you can't increase productivity at the expense of sanity. You won't fly an overcrowded plane. Why do we allow an overcrowded operating list to run by people who don't know the procedures? It's dangerous. We need practical support that can come with a good friendly chat over coffee. We care for sick patients. Allow us to have, oh, hang on, that's out of order. So just next, I think actually, yeah. Sorry, I've got my notes out of order with, yeah, if you just go forwards to where Eric Levi, I was up to his. So these three things, back to the 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so these are three small things that Eric Levi suggests might be a good thing to work on, change, and that's where my notes come in. We need a top-down change. Administrators need to add efficiency and efficacy rather than simply adding bureaucratic complexity and complacency. The CEO should be the one facilitating, empowering and encouraging the work of the hospital. not dictating it. Healthcare facilities exist for the face-to-face encounter with their clinician. Next. We need practical assistance for healthcare. I want to talk to the people at my workplace because they're the ones who understand my struggles. Everyone seems overworked, preoccupied, and distracted at the same time. The greatest assets of a hospital is her staff. Improving staff morale must happen at multiple levels. Next. Do what is in your power to make bottom-up change. Perhaps the antidote to a loss of meaning is an attitude of gratitude. You can call it what you like, a sense of purpose, a calling, a vocation. You can link this to something bigger than yourself. As a healthcare worker, I dispense hope and care to the ill patients I see every day, together with my colleagues. Sometimes that care comes in the form of medicine or surgery. Other time that care comes in the form of my words. Every day, my words and actions have an influence on others, and that's something I'm thankful for. And then next. Please do give us some feedback. What have we done well or not so well? This enables us to continue to improve this webinar.